Good afternoon, I'm Mark Anderson. I represent the 62nd District. On February 27th, I, along with Mr. Reinhard Meyer, testified in front of the Energy and Technology Committee. We testified in favor of an amendment to SB 1352. We advocated for a temporary moratorium on battery energy storage systems, acronym is BESS, and a moratorium until the state adopts minimum standards for protection of public health, safety, and welfare. Following me, you'll hear more fidelity from several individuals why this moratorium is necessary. I'll now turn this over to Granby First Selectman Mark Fiorentino, who will speak and introduce the following speakers.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Representatives, thank you for being here. My name is Mark Fiorentino. I'm the First Selectman in Granby. I want to thank everybody who took the time to be here today, especially the representatives of our first responders and our safety community. We recognize and are very grateful for the work you do every day, putting your lives on the line for the citizens of our state. And we're proud to be with you here today to advocate for this moratorium and development of some minimum safety standards to protect you and our communities. Very specifically, we're asking, as Representative Anderson said, the legislature to adopt a temporary moratorium to develop some statewide standards around these facilities. Although we are from Granby and we've had recent experience in front of the Siting Council, this is not a Granby-specific issue. This affects the safety of citizens all across our state. Just by way of example, based on the ISO New England filings that have been made to date, there are battery energy storage facilities planned at some level or proposed at some level in the communities of Bridgeport, Enfield, Bloomfield, Berlin, South Windsor, Manchester, Middletown, Portland, Haddam, New Haven, Wallingford, Oxford, New London, Unixville, Montville, and Killingly. There may actually be others. Those are just the ones we know about so far that have gotten far enough along to get on the ISO docket, if you will. What we're talking about is the risk of thermal runaway. For those of you who are watching, this is kind of a depiction of what thermal runaway looks like. It's not a very good depiction. It's hard to show this in 2 dimensions. If you're not familiar with what can happen in one of those events, just Google Moon's Landing, California for an example of what happens. Very short. The technology here, although it is changing, can be very volatile, and when they fail, they create events that require evacuations and fires and explosions that are so hot that they cannot be put out. Here's the reason we need action. The Siting Council recently approved a battery energy storage facility in Granby. We raised a number of concerns, a lot around the safety of our first responders. And in Granby, we have a volunteer fire department first rate, but they don't have the resources to respond to these events. We also raised issue, the site in Granby sits on in our aquifer protection zone, which that aquifer provides the potable water for the vast majority of the citizens in Granby. The Siting Council largely ignored those concerns and approved the site on a 6-2 vote. The best way I can emphasize why everybody in this state should be concerned and why this action we're asking for makes perfectly good sense is to paraphrase what the presiding officer said in the council proceedings before he voted yes to approve this site. He said, "I don't like this site. I think there are better suited sites, but it's the one the developer chose, and it met all of the requirements." I'm going to take a second and show you the site we were talking about in Granby. I don't know how I'm going to do this artfully, but this is the site that was proposed in Granby at 100 Salmonbrook Street. I'll just show you some indications of why, if the presiding officer was right, and it met all the requirements, while why these requirements are seriously lacking. They need to be fixed. So this is the site in Granby. The first thing I would point out to you is that it has no direct access to a public roadway. Access has to come through an existing, well-used, crowded commercial shopping center through a recorded easement between two buildings, parking areas, and a drive-through. So if a thermal runaway event happens here, they have to deal with all of this here just to even get to the site. So the public access is through a roadway that runs through the shopping center. The other thing that was important that we pointed out to the council, which they ignored, is this roadway is the only access to this apartment complex here. So residents here, in the event of thermal runaway, are either going to be trapped in their homes or outside of their homes during the duration of the event. So in Granby, this site, to show you what we're talking about, this green line is the perimeter of the facility. We cited in our case a standard that the Siting Council used 60 days before our decision to deny 2 similar battery storage facilities. There's an international, I know you guys are aware of it, there's an International Association of Fire Chiefs guideline that says in the event of thermal runaway, you need a minimum 300 clear zone. Everything needs to be out within 300 feet. The Siting Council denied 2 because there were property lines within 300 feet, which made sense. We thought this is easy because there's multiple property lines affected here at the Salmon Brook site. But they ignored it in our case. This is a 300-foot line, this purple line right here. So not only do we have property lines within 300 feet, we have wooded areas, we have established wetlands, we have water courses that lead to the Salmon Brook and Farmington River tributary system, and we have 4 occupied commercial buildings within 300 feet of this site. Finally, we pointed out to the Siting Council, this entire site sits in an aquifer protection zone. That aquifer provides potable water to the vast majority of residents and businesses in Granby. Developer didn't provide a mitigation plan in the event of thermal runaway and wasn't required to do one. So as I said, if this site meets all of the requirements, there's something seriously wrong with these requirements. That's why we're asking the legislature to take action. That's why everybody across the state should be worried, because I'm sure you have sites that are similar and have the same concerns in your communities. Now is the time to act. If we're thinking about it with any amount of clarity, now is the time to act. We do not want to be and don't need to be like the states of California and New York, who have experienced these events and now are going backwards to try to figure out what they can do to deal with them in a more strategic manner. So here's the action plan, and then I'm going to introduce some others. As Representative Anderson said, there's a bill pending in the Energy and Technology Committee. We've proposed an amendment to it that would adopt a moratorium until the state can design some statewide standards around these issues. I have copies that, as I understand it, the amendment is not yet drafted yet, but I've got copies of what Representative Anderson submitted to the committee, which describes what we are looking for. We're asking everybody here, everybody who's watching, contact the members of the committee and urge them to adopt this amendment. Contact other members of your communities and ask them to do the same. As I said when I started, we're proud to be here, and I think the first person who's going to speak is Peter Brown.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Peter Brown. I'm the president of the Uniformed Professional Firefighters Association, which represents nearly 4,000 career firefighters across the state. I just want to take a minute to thank Representative Anderson for bringing, and all the members of the community for bringing this issue to our attention. And as part of our organization, we stand in strong support of this moratorium. We're fortunate in Connecticut. We haven't dealt with one of these serious incidents of thermal runaway in an energy storage system as of yet. But I know I've personally spoken to firefighters across the country that have been to these incidents. The picture below, I think the one on the top right, depicts an incident out of Arizona. And as the Selectman said, the picture doesn't really do it justice. In speaking to the firefighters that responded to that incident, they showed up on scene to a large-scale energy storage system. There was very little sign of a serious emergency, just a light smoke condition. And before they knew it, thermal runaway caused a catastrophic failure of that system, which seriously injured a number of the first responders on scene. If that incident occurred in a residential or commercial neighborhood, who knows what the additional injuries may have been. But I think as a state, we need to prioritize the safety of not only our first responders, but the public, and make sure that we really give some serious thought before we approve any more of these systems. So again, we stand with everyone here today in strong support of this, and as the fire service, we will back any of these measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Chief, did you want to say anything? All right. I also want to thank Representative Piscopo for your support so far. There you are. And then Representative Delnicki, do you want to speak? I hope you do. All right, thank you.
I'm State Representative Tom Delnicki, and I represent one of the aforementioned towns in that list, South Windsor. To date, we've been able to block it, and literally when we first found out about this, I had a meeting with the mayor and the fire chief, retired UPFF, currently South Windsor Volunteer Fire Department. Does anyone remember the Connecticut transit bus that caught on fire with the lithium batteries? My recollection is they poured thousands of gallons of water on that bus, and literally it kept burning. And finally they had to bury it in sand. This is what we're talking about. We are talking about a fire that can take a life of its own on and is almost impossible to extinguish. I dare say the entire list of towns that have been mentioned here up front at the beginning of the press conference here are all at risk should they have one of these lithium battery storage centers. The bottom line really is this: there has to be a safer way to do it, in my opinion, to have that battery storage with a different kind of technology. And if you're going to have that technology, then there has to be some way to put the fire out. And that's going to be the challenge. Every community in the state of Connecticut needs to jump on board, because who's going to be next? We heard Granby, we heard South Windsor, we heard a number of other towns. At some point, we have to say no. And that's literally my message here. You need to get in front of everyone. You need to make it known. You need to get the message out that there's a huge safety issue here. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so we got the action plan. Everybody who's watching knows who the members of that committee are. Get to work. I will, hearing you talk though, I thought about it, because we talked about this in front of the siding council. Thousands of gallons of water. The developer in our case testified, we have 8 of these storage units proposed, that if any one of them, if they went into an event, could last from a couple of hours up to 24 hours. So up to 24 hours per container. We have 8 containers. We're pouring thousands of gallons of water on the surrounding containers until it's under control, on top of our aquifer that supplies water to our community. And if the siding council can approve a project like that by saying it meets all the standards, there's something wrong with these standards and they need to be fixed. So thank you very much. We're very grateful for all of you being here and for all of you legislators' support in helping us try to get this done.